Well, guys, apparently you couldn't hear a word I said. I'm going to start the update completely over, and we'll just go down and run down the earthquakes yet once again. Apparently, when I did the switchover, my audio didn't pick up, go figure, when I was showing the fracking operations. So I don't know what you heard, I don't know what you didn't hear, and unfortunately, I don't have my phone in here, and my wife is nowhere to be found, so she didn't get the text message. So let's go ahead and start this over, okay? Now, I'm sorry, we spent a good 10 minutes wasting your time waving my mouse around there, so let's just get back into it. So, guys, in case you didn't hear, since last night, a noteworthy earthquake struck on the West Coast. Now, it's a magnitude less than what I was looking for. I'm going to quickly run over the United States. We'll quickly re-explain what happened. So, 4.0 struck on the West Coast, start of this morning. After this morning, we saw a new earthquake strike out here in Colorado. Now, the Colorado earthquake was 0.3 less than the earthquake on the West Coast. However, the earthquake on the West Coast went up to 4.9 magnitude. You can go check the station list. You don't have to take my word for it. Just understand, up to a 4.9 was detected by up to 40 stations that reported in. That being said, mid-range 4 struck there, followed by a 4.0 over here in Colorado. Now, this location I was going to show you, and I went silent when I tried to show it to you, is a well-known oil and gas fracking operation. Okay? Now, I'm going to show you those pictures in a second, but understand, after that 4.0 hit, then the pumping operation in Oklahoma was struck by a huge swarm. You can see the swarm marked out on the map here. I almost don't even have to tell you about it. They're stacked on top of each other. Now, what you do need to see are pictures, which you saw me waving my mouse around as I was showing you the different things, but apparently you didn't hear what I was saying. So, let's go back in there and let me quickly explain to you what I was waving my mouse around at. This is significant, and you need to hear it before we go look at the international activity, okay? So, here's the way you do it. You pull the coordinates from the USGS, very simply. Copy the coordinates from the USGS, put them in on Google Earth. Okay, so we'll do that. We'll put the coordinates in on Google Earth. It's going to zoom us in on the Colorado-New Mexico border. Now, this is the spot where you couldn't hear what I was saying, and it's crucial. These pads, every single one of these pads, is a different pumping operation. And when I show you on the screen, I hope you're going to understand what we're talking about here. Okay, so when we zoom in on these areas, you're going to make out these are a large series of pumping operations, not just a few. We're talking about hundreds, if not thousands, of drill points across southern Colorado. Now, this is significant for many reasons. These thousands of drill points down here at the Colorado-New Mexico border are vulnerable to pressure that comes over from the West Coast. So, if a large earthquake or a noteworthy earthquake, 4.0 or greater, strikes on the West Coast, we usually see activity spread to the east over the course of a few hours to a few days. Now, guys, just as I'm talking right now, a new 3.5 has just struck in Oklahoma at the swarm. So the swarm in Oklahoma is becoming significant in size. Why is it becoming significant in size? Well, there was up to a 5.0 that struck on the West Coast today. Now, many stations reported less, many stations reported more than 4.3. So the swarm that's breaking out here is a result of the pressure coming from the West Coast, natural pressure coming from the West Coast. But when it hits these pumping operations, guess what happens? It's like hitting a perforation on a piece of cardboard, a rigid cardboard box that you're bending. So it bends and fractures at the spots that humans have come in and perforated. And in this case, they've also hydraulically charged the perforation points, the deep wells going thousands of feet down into the crust. Each one of these is a spot where there's gas, oil, and water under pressure, like a hydraulic shock absorber in your car. But your car's shock absorber is designed to take that thrust upwards and transfer it up into a hydraulically charged chamber that's properly pressurized to absorb that blast or that impact. In this case, these are not designed to take a blast or an impact. And the concrete and stone or steel casements that surround the upper portion of the well fracture when the pressure comes in from underneath or from the side. So all of these, every single one of these little square pads is a different drill point. Feel free to come into southern Colorado at Trinidad, go down to the south into New Mexico where the earthquake occurred, and look at all these. I got tired of marking them. Okay? So that's Colorado, right? Now let's go over to Oklahoma. Let's take a look. We're topping out at a swarm of 3.5s. Nearly a dozen threes. That's let you know we're looking at a significant size swarm. Now let's pull the coordinates, put them in just like we do for all the others. You have to do this, guys. You almost have to take the coordinates yourself and go look them up. Let me get a sip of my coffee since I talked for 10 minutes without anybody hearing me. Oh, excuse me. Okay, so take a look at the screen here. Now you're going to see a bunch of square pads, right? Just like the ones we were looking at out in Colorado, but now we're in Oklahoma. Look at this. Let me zoom in on these. You can take any random zoom in on any one of them, and you'll see the storage tanks, the wellhead, the drill point, and they're all connected by pipelines. These are all new. So they've come in the past few years, built these new oil wells and gas wells, and they inject wastewater down into the crust, down into the deep drill points. This wastewater comes from big industry to dispose of their toxic water. They will pay to pump it down into these old oil wells where it's stored for supposedly ever. But what actually happens is pressure comes from the West Coast. See, you can't blame the oil companies. Now, guys, I'm not on the side of big oil at all. But you can't blame the fracking companies for these earthquakes so much because how do I say this? The geologic theory they were operating under, accepted by all the professionals, said that pressure did not transfer across the plate. Okay? So, now the pressure is confirmed to be transferring across the plate. Well, what do they have here in the middle of the plate? A whole bunch of perforation points where pressure is going to seek out. It was unforeseen by any professional because they were operating under old geologic dogmas. Guess who's the first guy to come along online and make videos and catch hell for doing it, to talk about pressure transferring from the West Coast to the East Coast in a matter of days? You're listening to me. I'm the guy who proposed it, and I caught total hell for saying it. But now you can see it. You don't even have to take my word for it. Look at the screen. 4.3 on the West Coast, 4.0 in Colorado, swarm of threes in Oklahoma. So ultimately, this is going to transfer over to the East Coast. We're going to see at least one 3.5 strike either Christmas, day after Christmas, within a few days, and it's going to be up here north of New York, New Brunswick, Maine, Nova Scotia. Okay? So that's the update for the United States. Now, we're going to get a forecast out for the United States in a minute, but let's quickly run down over here in the West Pacific. So, you didn't hear anything I said, so I'm going to start over. The areas we named over here in the West Pacific starting last night were hit. The 5.1 here at the Triangular Bend, we talked about this last night, in between the letter D and our other swarm. See that? So the 5.1 struck right in the middle, the fulcrum point, near Vanuatu. Furthermore, over to the west, a swarm of 5s topping out near 6, 5.8, broke out multiple 5.8s. Now I would call that a 6. So at near 6, multiple 6s broke out here back at Papua New Guinea, which is the spot that was struck with the 7.9 earthquake. Now as we go further to the west-northwest, take a look. 5s, 4s, Philippines, South Indonesia, going to the west-northwest all the way up to the coast of Honshu. The coast of Honshu, Japan, we warned last night. We said, look, it's going to be larger than it was the day before. 4.6 was the day before. We said it was going to be consistent with what struck to the south. Look what struck to the south. 5s. We got 5 here, 5s here, 5 here, 5s all the way up, and then a 5.1, striking right in the warned zone. But guess what? You're not done yet. You're going to get hit by a 5.7 to 5.8 here on the coast of Honshu within the next 2 days. Either Christmas Day or the day after Christmas should be at, an upper 5. Could go to 6. If you add all these 5s together, it would equal about a 6. But we're going to lose a little bit of steam going across this area, which means more like 5.8. striking right back in our same area that's been hit for the last several times each time it struck, coast of Honshu. So get the warning out to the people in Japan. Let them know. Okay? As we go further to the west, this gets a little bit more complex. We have to go over towards Europe. We have to analyze what struck in Europe today. Now, I talked about this previously, but I'll talk about it quickly. 4.4 struck along the eastern portion of the warned area. Now, you may remember we warned central Italy last night, and we talked about the S-shaped bend, here marked by our red arrow. We also talked about the earthquake, the deep earthquake that struck along the S-shaped bend just yesterday. Now, right in between both deep earthquakes, we have a 4.4. Now, we were looking for a 5.0 potential striking in central Italy. Now, I believe this 4.4 actually was a little bit higher. I think Janet Fullerlove, our Italian viewer, found a recording of 5.3 from the Macedonian agency. This was in Macedonia, by the way. So, or I'm sorry, Montenegro. Excuse me. Montenegro. So, in the Montenegro agency reported in as 5.3. Europeans reported at 4.3. So it's between 4.3 and 5.3. We were looking for a 5 to strike here. See where the 2.5 is? Okay, so we were warning for there, and it got hit here. Now, I consider that an earthquake forecast miss, even though the magnitude's spot on. Again, going up to 5.3, we warned for a 5. So, if we warn for a 5, and it strikes 200 miles to the east, I consider that a miss because the people in Italy are looking for the warning. And if the people just along the Aegean Sea over to the east, or I'm sorry, the Adriatic Sea to the east, if they get hit, what good is it to issue a warning for central Italy when the area 200 miles away is hit? So I'm trying to get it down to a very, very fine point within a few hundred miles. But we did talk about this area right here, and we talked about the deep earthquake. So it struck right in between. So that's the movement. So Italy, you're off the hook right now. However, for the next couple days, going over Christmas, guess what's happening back over here to the east? Well, you got a 4, you got a swarm of 3s, and you got new activity that's going to develop out. We got new deep earthquakes. Take a look at the last 2 to 3 days. We have a series of deep earthquakes on both sides of the Pacific. We have a series of 5s going up to 5.8, 5.9, connecting the regions. The coast of California was hit. Midwest was hit. That alone says it right there. New deep earthquakes, spreading 5s, going up to 6, and U.S. hit. Everywhere else, you need to be on watch right now. And look, I'm not trying to, tell you need to tune in over Christmas or whatever. So just keep watch. If you want to, watch the earthquakes on whatever site you normally watch on. But watch for them to progress along these lines. And the magnitudes are simple to compute. Let me quickly explain. How do you compute what magnitude to watch, and how do you compute what area is going to be hit next? Normally, we look to our silent zones, our areas in between the spots where movement's occurring. So we have a silent zone, for instance, here in Papua New Guinea. See this right here? No earthquakes there. Normally, you'd see a few 4s and 5s over a couple days' time. Everything striking to the east. Now we're going back 5-6 days. No earthquakes there. See? Okay. Well, what does that mean? It means Papua New Guinea has been sitting high and dry with 2 8.0 earthquakes over to the east and a swarm of deep earthquakes all around it. And it hasn't been hit by a single 4.0 earthquake in the last 6 days. So what does that mean? It means there's going to be a release in Papua New Guinea right where our 2 arrows are, and it's going to be a combination of what struck over the past 48 hours. A combination of what? A combination of both sides. So if you add up the swarm of 5.8s over to the east, and you add up the swarm of 5s to the west, that's already taking us well above 6. If each one of these 5.8s is a 6, and we have 4 of them, that equals like a 6.4. It takes 10 6s to equal a 7. It takes 10 5s to equal a 6, and so forth. So if we add those rough addition together, we're already looking at a mid-range 6, striking in Papua New Guinea. But then you have to add in the other swarm on the western side. So swarm on the eastern side adds up to a 6.4. Swarm on the western side, a 5 plus a swarm of other 5s basically. Well, if you add that 5 with a swarm of other 5s, that's a 5.5. Add in the 5.5 to the 6.4, and we go up to 6.45. Rough addition. So if we add them together, 6.45, that, of course, takes us right in on Papua New Guinea. As we go over to the west, we're going to have to watch over the next several days for the potential to go up again back in, well, everywhere from Iran back into Greece and South Italy, possibly as far west as France. But when we take a look at it overall, guys, I just saw in chat you guys were just talking about Sicily. What happened in Sicily? I just saw Sicily go by. 4.9 in Sicily, is that right? No way, really? 4.9 in Sicily. Well, there's your earthquake. There's your Italy earthquake right there. Similar in size. Wow. Let's go check. Let's go check real time. Hold on. Let's go to our seismologist page. You guys can see this, right? This is how you do it. If an earthquake strikes as you're doing something and it's not reported on the USGS site yet, you have to go check. Yep, Sicily, 4.9. How many stations reporting? Oh, we got a 6.0 detected, guys. We got a 6.0 detected at one of these stations. 4.9 and 6.0. Two stations reporting. Two. That's it. Two. Now, how many are reporting at the other? Okay, we've got manual reporting at multiple stations, but no magnitudes listed yet. Between 4.9 and 6.0 detected, with a 2.5 detected as far out as Poland, but I guarantee you that Poland earthquake is most likely reported to the near 6 that just struck in Italy. Let's see. Let's go check our earthquake information really quick. Let's go to the latest list of earthquakes. Okay, nothing yet. Nothing yet. Okay, let's go check the INGV list. Let's go check the Italian list. See what we got going on here. Okay, the Italians have the 4.2 listed. Look at that. Look at that. Well, if we do see a 4.9, 5.0 earthquake strike down here in Sicily, I won't be surprised. I mean, we were looking for a 5 to strike, and I said we just reached the 72-hour mark. Again, I just needed to give it 12 hours. That's crazy. That's crazy. Need to give it 12 hours. You know, every time I'm going to add a new rule. How many people are in here right now? 766 people. Okay, I'm adding a new forecast rule right now. If I get to a point where my warning expires, let's say I issue a 72-hour warning and it expires, I'm going to automatically extend the warning out to an additional watch, less than a warning, but more than just it's all good, and we'll give it an additional 12 hours because this is I want to say it's about the 15th or maybe 20th time where we've canceled a warning, and then 12 hours later the earthquake hits. So, the arbitrary numbers that I'm putting on here, day-wise, for warning-wise, is the human function that's the most prone to error. That's, again, that's my estimation. How long do we have to watch here for this to crack? How many licks? How many licks does it take to get to the center of the Tootsie Pop? 1, 2, 3, right? And then it takes an incoming push of pressure, which here's our 4, that then triggers the earthquake. I don't know. They might not even report it. Who knows? It's showing up on the seismologist page right now. It's exciting to me just because I'm an earthquake nerd. All right. So that's not a big enough earthquake if it struck in Sicily to be causing very much damage. Even if it's at 5 level, like I said, it's enough to knock things off shelves. It's enough to scare people when we were talking about that last night. But overall, it's not enough to collapse buildings and cause major infrastructure damage. So as long as it stays down below that level, we're all good in the long run when it comes to that size earthquake. But if it is a 5 there, and people do start reporting shake reports, then I won't be surprised. It'll just be that it took 12 hours longer than what I thought it was going to take. And you can go back and watch my warnings for the area between Sicily and central Italy. And if it struck in between Sicily and central Italy, that'll just be amazing. That'll be absolutely amazing. So, everybody in here, I guess you need to pay attention, and you need to pay attention close, because the spots that are going to be hit next are our silent zones. Okay, our silent zones. So the spots that are prone to be hit next, like Sicily, for instance, or in between Norcia and Sicily. You're primed up. You had a 4 there, and you have a swarm of 3s. I won't be shocked if there is a 4.9 there. As we go across West Asia, going across over Sumatra, this takes us back to Christmas of 2004. If we go back to Christmas of 2004, we have the Boxing Day earthquake that killed hundreds of thousands of people, unfortunately, with the massive tsunami waves that inundated the shores of Sumatra, Indonesia, even India, going across Malaysia. All these areas were hit by big waves in 2004. Well, it's been a long time, and there hasn't been anything of that size causing a tsunami. Now, we did have some 8s out here on the the mid-Indian ridge, but overall, Sumatra hasn't been struck by these megaquakes that we saw strike 12 years ago in Sumatra. So, what's going on in Sumatra right now? Why aren't there any earthquakes? Well, we have to go consult Volcano Discovery. I always recommend you guys check Volcano Discovery for the latest reports. I don't get any recommendation on this, so let's see, discovery.com. It'll give you the most recent volcanic news. It's just one site of many that'll give it to you, but I use this one. It seems to have the most current information. So they have the latest eruption reports today as of December 23rd and 24th. Now they're international time ahead of us, so let's check the 23rd and check it out, guys. Etna, after several days of very bad weather, Etna is again free of clouds. This morning, the saddle vent of Etna's southeast crater, between the old and new southeast crater, could be seen emitting a small ash plumes. Excuse me, again, I'm recovering from upper respiratory infection here, guys. So, that erupted in South Italy. Secondly, Bogoslav, big blast, another one, on top of yesterday's blast. Now, they have a new report. No more ash emissions have been detected, but the blast was huge, 35,000 feet. That was yesterday. Now, going into today, it's finally stopped, but now we have earthquakes up there. Colima in western Mexico, Fuego in Guatemala, Turrialba in Costa Rica, Sabancaya in Peru. Usual suspects. These guys show up on every single list that we see. They've been putting off blast almost every day since this new round of deep pressure occurred. So, over here in western Indonesia, you'll notice there's one volcano, if you're a longtime viewer, that wasn't on the list today. That's Mount Sinabung here, near where Toba is. Since Mount Sinabung hasn't erupted, and since we have all these swarms of 5s, if you add all this up together, all the swarms of 5s, we're already talking about a cumulative, like I said, 6.5 type earthquake. Well, when we get over here to western Indonesia, unfortunately, you could top out here up at the northwest tip, right where our red arrow is, and you could top out near 6.5 by the Christmas day or the day after Christmas. So, again, 24, 48 hours. And like I said, if it doesn't hit within 24 to 48 hours, I may extend it for an additional 12, but we're really just looking at 2 days for the pressure to transfer to the west, near Mount Sinabung. Why Mount Sinabung as opposed to any of these other locations? Well, take a look at the 4.0 that struck up here, and take a look at our earthquakes down here in Indonesia, and our halfway point between these two zones now brings us down into Sumatra. We're going to cancel the warning for the 4.9 to 5.0 earthquake here at the Red Bend at Myanmar and Western China. The reason we're canceling that is because the 4.0 struck over here where our other two arrows meet. Instead of at our arrow bend, it struck where our arrows meet. And that's, I think, due, like I said, to what's going on up in Japan right now with the deep earthquakes. So, halfway point, new halfway point, Sumatra, Indonesia at Christmas. And it could go up to 6.4. The last 6.5 killed 100 people here. Okay? It struck right here, actually. The last 6.4 struck on land right here. So the next 6.4 should strike out along the arrow. That's the only good news. Now, if I'm 100 miles off, or 200 miles off, it'll strike on land. And it could result in the deaths of another 100 people. So please get the warning out. It's reliable. You can count on it. You can count on the pressure following these areas. I didn't just get lucky naming Costa Honshu. It had been multiple days since Costa Honshu had been hit by anything above mid-range 4 or 4. Now here we are at the 5s in the spot. We didn't just get lucky naming Vanuatu. We didn't just get lucky naming any of these areas on the West Coast or in the Midwest. Same with in South America, guys. we can see which way the pressure transferred over the last day and a half. Take a look at it. See this? See the red arrows that go across the whole Pacific here from our letter D, where our deep earthquakes occurred a couple days ago? The red arrows point to two areas. Look at where our excitement is occurring. Look at the tips of the red arrows. Look where they point. They point right into our cluster points. And it's not just luck. This happens on a schedule. Like a road map or a train map, you can follow this and you can follow the pressure. So if you see large pressure building upstream from you and it's coming downstream, you know to prepare for it. Okay? So we'll find out about this earthquake down in South Italy. I wouldn't be surprised if it wasn't felt by people. We've really seen this in the past, that it doesn't get reported. It's if the tree falls in the woods and if anybody's there to hear it, does it make a sound? I guess geologists ask that about earthquakes, but I'm just being sarcastic there. So we'll have to wait and see if something goes on in South Italy or not, if that's a false report. Regardless of the false reports, we need to be on watch over this holiday time because of the creeping fives, because of the deep earthquakes, really quick. Guys, take a look at the screen here. I'm going to show you a graphic. This is on my website, on my post talking about the pressure transfer. Big post, really cool, free to view if you guys want to come over to Dutchsinse.com and check it out. You'll find this graphic. And this is thanks to Sumo over in the UK, who I'm drinking a cup of coffee, sent to me a whole pack from the UK, English coffee. So, pressure's coming up from the plasma core. The core of the Earth is not a solid ball of metal, guys. It's a plasma torch powered by electron cascade from the sun. Voltage from the sun. Regardless of whether or not you believe the core of the Earth is plasma or solid, there's a liquid mantle above the core that nobody disputes. It's liquid rock, liquid elements of all kinds, every element known to man melted and flowing around together down in this liquid magma. Now, the pressure comes up from down below. As the pressure comes up, it hits these areas and spreads outwards and upwards. The pressure does. And I showed you the shell angles on here. The shells are potential areas that are affected around the earthquake coming up from down below. So you see these two deep earthquakes on either side of the Pacific, right? Now, how far apart do you suppose those two deep earthquakes are? I mean, just a rough guess. Anybody, you guys paying attention in chat, take a look at it. They're both raised high off the globe. One is up in Kamchatka, Russia. The other is down in Fiji. I'm going to go do a line measurement tool just to get a rough estimation on how far apart these are. So you can see our 4.1 deep earthquake right here. Let me get it. Okay, I'm going to wiggle it around. Okay, there it is. Okay, it's off the coast of Kamchatka. And let's get our letter D. Okay, let's get our coordinates for that. And I'm just going to do a line measurement tool. The reason I'm doing this is to show you how much of the plate is being displaced within a few hours' time. This is significant. This is going to affect all of us in the next few days. Okay, so here's our coordinates for the deep earthquake down in Fiji. Now I'm just going to do this real quick. It'll only take a second for us to figure out how far apart these are. So there's our coordinates, right? Now let's get our line measurement tool on here for miles. I'll do miles and kilometers so all my international viewers can catch wind of what we're going to come out with here. Okay, so you can clearly see here we are in the West Pacific. Now I'm going to drag this all the way up to off the coast of Kamchatka. And it was roughly, where would you say? It was roughly right here, I'd say. Let's go check. Okay, let's get all the other earthquakes off there. There it is. Yeah, I'm pretty close. I mean, that's close enough, right? I mean, you guys would say I could get the coordinates for this too. But, I mean, you can see it. All right, it's right there. Yeah, so here's our little inlet. It's right off the shores here. 5,000, let's just say 5,200 miles. 5,200 miles across is being displaced. 8,400 kilometers. 5,200 miles, 8,400 kilometers displaced all the way across within a few hours' time. So in other words, the whole West Pacific displaced down below. Now let's get back to my graphic and imagine this as the whole West Pacific. And that amount of pressure coming up on the underside of the whole West Pacific. Well, what's that going to do to the Pacific plate? It's going to displace it. It's going to displace the whole Pacific plate across Japan, down across Asia, again going all the way out to Europe, and back over to the United States. The East Pacific will compensate for the West Pacific. If something's pushing up on the underside of the West Pacific, the East Pacific is going to compensate with similar size movement. And it's not far-fetched. We see it happen. That's why we have the arrows on the map the way they're pointing. Pressure to the north transfers over to the northeast. Northwest transfers to the northeast. Central west transfers to central east. Southwest transfers to southeast, and back and forth like a tennis match sometimes, depending on how much force we're talking about. The X marks are where we see pressure finally end up. The D marks, the letter Ds, are where we see normally deep earthquakes. Now, deep earthquakes do occur elsewhere, like up here in Kamchatka, but they're more rare, not enough to put a letter D on the map. So, if we start seeing, a whole bunch happen up here over maybe the next year or 2 years, 3 years, we may have to add a letter D up here. But I can tell you most of the time, pressure transfers from the deep earthquakes outwards from these letter Ds over to our letter X's. And it's been 7 years of study on this, so we've got a pretty good idea of where to expect the pressure to transfer. If you're on the West Coast, you always have warning signs of what's coming next. Do you want to know what's coming next, now that you saw a mid-range 4 off the coast? Let's go ahead and show you, and I'll show you how to look for yourselves. So the way we look at the last 24 hours of earthquakes on the West Coast. This will show us our larger activity and our smaller activity. Now first, make note of it. You see how it's in a crescent shape here across the South U.S. and bending up to the northwest. Well, look at our lines on the map. It's following the lines on the map. Why are the lines on the map being hit? Well, pressure is coming in from the northwest, and it's pushing on the whole plate to the east-southeast. Now, these interior portions, the crescent shape, is the interior portion called the craton. And the craton is the unsubducted, older portion, the stable portion, the interior portion of the plate. And so, larger movement is based upon the activity on the coast, pushing on this rigid structure, if you will. So what's happening right now is there's swarms that have broken out all the way across the edge of the plate, going over towards the New Madrid seismic zone in the last 24 hours. This is going to reach all the way up to the northeast very soon, in the next day. As that happens over Christmas, going to the day after Christmas at the most, once it hits the East Coast, the pressure button is reset for the West Coast. It can't go any further than going over to the East Coast. Maybe transfer out to our letter X, most likely losing steam by the time it reaches the final arrow tip here, up near Maine and New Brunswick and Nova Scotia. So, over the next several days, day after Christmas, 26th, 27th, we have to look back to the West Coast to be struck again. And this time, the West Coast should be struck south of the 4.3, north of Eureka on the Gorda Escarpment. Maybe possibly going on to land, but I'm more leaning out to sea. It's only going to be a 50 to 75 mile area here that we're going to have to watch. You see the east to west shadow here? That's the Gorda Escarpment. So we have to watch the eastern portion of the Gorda Escarpment south of the 4.3, northwest of the swarm at Geysers, California, and the magnitude should be consistent with the magnitudes striking over here in the northwest Pacific. Mid-range 5. Let's say a 5.9 to 6 strikes in Japan, or 5.8. That will lose a few points as it comes across and transfers over to our arrow. Now, as of right now, I need to cancel the warning for Vancouver, BC, and move it up here to the northwest in Alaska. So our 5.9 that's due should be striking in the eastern Aleutian Island chain, western mainland portion of Alaska, within, let's say, the next 48 hours to 72 hours. So 2 to 3 days. And I'm putting a longer time on that, even though that the volcanic blasts have happened over here to the west. Each volcanic blast is equal to a 5. Right off the bat. So if we already had 3 blasts, each one going up to 35,000 feet, 25,000 feet, and now it's done, that means the area in between where the 4.1 is, you see here, and the cluster in Alaska, slightly raised high off the globe, that middle point, the fulcrum point, is going to be struck. And it should be struck right offshore, so it shouldn't strike on land itself. It'll strike right near our red arrow, which is actually slightly offset from the plate boundary. So middle point will be hit, and we're going to watch for it again to be in that 5.9 range. Multiple 5s plus what's coming in from Japan. And that should be by the 26th to 27th. So, Vancouver, you're out of it. But why are you out of it? Do you want to know why you're out of it? I already looked at the NR Canada feed. Let's go check once more. Here's NR Canada. This is thanks to MC Player and Squeaks, who are our resident programmers in chat for Earthquake 3D trying to get the feeds together. But when you take a look at the feeds, you're going to see a few things. Look at what struck. Swarm activity over here along Vancouver Island going up to the north. Multiple swarms going up to mid-range 3. USGS not reporting. So if we get swarms and they break out in there, that's better than a large earthquake, but your swarms relieved your pressure. So it's not that much of a significant earthquake we're talking about. But when you take a look at the magnitudes reported, I'm just wondering how many days behind are they? I'm just wondering. I mean, it's a good question. I mean, we don't know because NR Canada isn't exactly up to date on reporting their earthquakes. I'd like to go to their website really quick and just quickly check. NR Canada earthquake. This is how you search it if you guys just want to do it. Right? Check out earthquakes.canada.nrcanada.gc.ca or just search Canada earthquake. And you will find their list. It's always important to check their last 30-day list. There's two ways to do it. You can just click on recent earthquakes. Okay, this will take you to their recent earthquakes page. Click on month. I know this is getting a little boring, but you got to see it. Got to check it just in case. Okay, so our last reported earthquake, 23rd, good. They're up to date. Now, I want you to see QC stands for Quebec, BC stands for British Columbia. So take a look at BC and look what's going on here. So BC swarming out, Alaska at the BC border swarming out. So I don't even need to prove it to you on Earthquake 3D. Here's the list. Look at the station names, and we're talking about a large activity there. Now, East Coast is being struck by ones. Quebec is being struck by ones. So we're expecting that to go up to 3.5. Okay? So that's why BC was not struck with the large earthquake. You're seeing swarms of smaller earthquakes that are relieving your pressure, which is good news. That's what you want to see. But the pressure is building off the West Coast. There's no doubt about that. So for West Coast, you're going to be hit again. And then the Midwest, you're going to be hit again. So a day after the West Coast is hit, within a day, you should see a renewed swarm back in Oklahoma and Colorado again. Now we're going to put, it's a large area actually, South Colorado across the western panhandle of Oklahoma. So western Oklahoma going into Colorado should swarm. Why? Because you're looking at a near, again, a larger earthquake striking, like I said, near 6, 5.8, 5.7, striking off the coast of the Northwest. A whole step higher than where we were today, which was 4s. Okay? So, I hope you guys understand. If you want to know how to forecast an earthquake, like you want to know the nitty-gritty details, you can go over to my post titled, How to Forecast an Earthquake by Dutchsinse. It's free. It's just if you're going to use it and you try to take credit for yourself, of course, don't do that. But if you want to use the methodology and you want to study how to do it, I've made an hour-long video, detailed explanation how to do it, and I've typed it out in text. How to forecast an earthquake. It's below the video, which you can click on and read yourself. That all being said, the book, the book will be released in early 2017. I can make that announcement now for certain. So, I'll have a definite date very soon here on the book release. You can count on that. And it's been a long, arduous process of trying to even get that thing done. Oh boy, oh boy. So, thanks for everybody who's tuning in. How many people are in here right now? Let's go take a quick look. Whoa. Let's go take a quick look. Looks like about 800 people. If you're new, welcome in. I know I got recommended by some big channels on YouTube today. Big shout out to them. Appreciate everybody who's interested in seismic activity and forecasting. And if you're interested in the global wave, well, look, I mean, I stand by it. They tried to come out and say it was a data error. Oh, man. Look, if I had a dollar for every time I heard data error whenever anything interesting shows up, I would be a rich man. Okay, so I'm not a rich man. Nobody's paying out on that, but I'm sure somebody's getting paid to say that at some point or another. I don't believe in just chance or coincidence. And when something like that appears, you can't just discount it. If you don't know what it is and you've never seen it before, scientifically speaking, you need to observe it, see if anything happens. So that's where I'm at on the wave thing. I hear that there may be others coming in. We'll have to wait and watch. I'm going to watch all the systems. If anything shows up, I will bring it to you here, and we will review it together. I reserve judgment until whatever is supposed to happen happens, but I don't cast judgment before it happens anymore. I've learned my lesson on YouTube enough. So I encourage everybody. It's always good to be skeptical. It's not good to be a denier. Denying is when you have a preconceived notion about something that you want to maintain that you do with or without proof. Okay? Not going to lecture. Hope you're all good. Hope you're going to have a good Christmas if you celebrate Christmas, or Hanukkah if you celebrate Hanukkah, or Kwanzaa if you celebrate Kwanzaa, or just if you're an atheist and you just have the holiday off, have a good time off. Have a good weekend. Be safe. Stay warm. Now, I'm not going to have that problem. It's going to be 60 degrees here in St. Louis. But you guys stay warm if you're up in the north or over in Europe or over in Russia or North Europe or something. Stay warm. Have a good time. Be safe. Much love. And everybody in here, again, thanks for being part of this and for getting the warnings out to the people. I know some lives have been affected. I don't know if they've been saved, but I certainly know some injuries have been prevented, and I know some people really appreciate getting the warnings. So let the people in California know. You got warning signs that show up the days before there's movement off the coast. Let the people in Japan know. Your deep earthquakes all around you indicate you're going to be moving. Let the people in Sumatra know. Look, you're at the tip of the iceberg. You're at the pinnacle between the 2 points that are moving over in Sumatra, the mega quake location near Cinnabon. Let the people in Italy know, look, there's movement over to your east. Your swarm has basically carried on for the last several weeks. You need to be on watch just in case. But chances are the earthquake that struck to the east is relieving the pressure off North Sea for now. But you got to watch. You got to wait. You have to watch the road map that we've provided for you here on the screen. And if you want to use it and apply it yourself, just make note of where the arrows point to, and you can look at any map. And remember this. Remember, it goes to the west, off the West Pacific. It goes over the United States, directly across our transfer zones. The transfer zones are the fracture zones, east to west, all the way across the entire Pacific, like stair step, or like ladder rungs, or steps on stairs, going all the way across the entire Pacific. Those zones are connected. They transfer earthquake seismic energy across the entire plate. It's mind-boggling, and I understand that professionals thought this could never happen. But then again, I don't think they had the tools, the appropriate tools, like a 3D globe that they could easily plot things on. They would have had to have actually used a physical globe, like the spinning kind in the classroom, and have thumbtacks on here and somehow know where to mark the coordinates. I mean, the tools weren't there up until recently to do this. So now we can see earthquakes plotted in a semi-real-time manner across the planet, and we can see patterns and progressions that we could never possibly see before. And that's led to a method of discovery that I, quite frankly, stumbled into. I wish I would have never even discovered. It's kind of made life a little bit more difficult for me. So, that all being said, I want you guys to learn how to do it so you can do it yourselves. And if you're a scientist and you're a professional, you can repeat it on your own. And you can come in here and take the heat with me in the kitchen, trying to get the warnings out to the people. If you care about saving lives. If you don't care about saving lives, then you don't have to come in the kitchen. All right? Word up to my people. I'll be back if anything else goes down. And everybody in chat, I'll be back in. You know I'll be back in. So maybe I'll grab a beer after midnight or something, and we can have a Christmas Eve day celebration. And it's already going into, well, now it's getting into real Christmas Eve over in New Zealand and Australia. You guys are right there. You're right there. Oh, my camera just died. Okay, well, I'm going to save this as a video on my channel, and then I'll be back in. If you want to share this video when I'm done talking here, it'll be posted on my YouTube channel within about an hour. Okay? Peace.